guys, this is Sierra. I said a long time ago on my Instagram that I would think about doing like a video review of the Looking for Alaska series on Hulu rather than just like reviewing it in my stories on Instagram. Just because it is like, for one thing, it was a TV series, or I guess a mini series, and not a movie. So I feel like because it goes so much in depth and there are so many episodes, I felt like I just really needed to like review it in a more like in-depth way. So that's why I decided to do the video. I also want to preface this by saying that I did read the book a long time ago. I read the book when I was in high school. I can't remember what grade I was in. I want to say it was like earlier in high school, so maybe like freshman or sophomore year. Definitely not my freshman year, maybe my sophomore year I read it. So I read it over 10 years ago, so I'm already familiar with the content of the book. I'm familiar with the plot. I'm familiar with the storyline. I'm familiar with the characters. So this review isn't going to be talking about like, oh, I was surprised about this happening in the plot, or like these things were problematic, or this critique of the storyline, because I already know the storyline and I knew the storyline going into it. So this is more so just about like the cinematic qualities, the casting, the things that were included and not included, and things like that. So I just wanted to really make sure that that disclaimer was out there, that I'm already familiar with the storyline. I'm not going to be talking about what shocked me and didn't shock me, because there wasn't really anything that shocked me because I already read the book. So I just recorded all of this and my computer froze. So I'm a little bit annoyed, but I'm going to record it again and just jump right in. I was really happy that they, I'm reading notes off my phone, by the way. I was really happy that they made Pudge annoying and imperfect as a character, because in the book, he's really portrayed as like, oh, like, he's like kind of socially awkward, he's naive, he's innocent, so therefore like we can't really like say he's annoying without sounding like a jerk. But really, the fact of the matter is he was annoying, and he was, I don't want to say selfish, I think stubborn and just like naive is what he was a lot in the book. There are going to be spoilers in this, by the way, and here comes the first spoiler, sorry. But like, especially after Alaska died, I love that in the show they especially showed how like blinded by love he was, and how resistant he was to accept the fact that it could be about something other than himself, other than his attachment, his relationship to her. So I love that they didn't shy away from the fact that, like, yes, he is an annoying character. Yes, he is imperfect. No, he's not right all the time. He does some stupid things. He does some selfish things. And I love that they were okay with making the protagonist, or the main character, a not so likable person 24/7. Did I still like him? Yeah, because like he is our narrator in the book, and we are essentially living through his perception of Alaska for much of the story. So yeah, I liked him, but like I was glad that they included those not so perfect parts of his identity as well, and didn't shy away from that. And I really appreciated that the story didn't end in the TV show as soon as she died, or like after the funeral. Even though in the book I know that she dies, and there's multiple chapters after she dies where the story continues on. I was a little like skeptical of how they would translate that on camera without it being without like losing the audience of people that didn't read the book. Because of course, if you read the book and then you watch the show, you know, okay, like yeah, she dies, but like things happen afterwards as well that are important to the story. But if you didn't read the book and you only watched the show, I was curious as to how they would keep the viewers watching and caring, and make it just as meaningful and as impactful in the after as much as the before. So I think they did a good job of having 2 full episodes dedicated to the after, and really exploring and showing the characters and their own journeys afterwards as much as before, you know. Chip's character was amazing. Chip, or the Colonel, he was rightfully a leader. I'm gonna like have to go on a tangent for a little minute because I think that he was portrayed amazingly. Even John Green himself and Josh Schwartz said that nobody else but Denis Love could have played that character, and he did such a good job. In the book, I don't think the Colonel is described as being black, and I think even Denis Love in an interview with John Green was like, yeah, I didn't think that the Colonel was black in the book. I don't remember him being mentioned as black. If he was, it was definitely like not highlighted, or not like revisited multiple times throughout the story. But I think the fact that they were able to, first of all, the Colonel comes off a very like, I am the leader, I'm a hothead sometimes, I'm this, I'm that in the book, and I didn't really understand why he was that way. I was like, okay, like there's this guy that's his roommate that's kind of a hard ass and kind of like a self-proclaimed leader and kind of like whatever, and he comes off kind of like too much in the book sometimes. Not like it was crucial to the story, and I didn't not want him included, but it was hard for me to understand why he was that way. But when you see Denny Love bring that character to life, it really makes sense, and he was more the Colonel than even the Colonel was in the book. He was that person, and he made it more of what it even could have been, you know? And I love that his racial identity was discussed in the TV show, but not in a oversaturated way, not in a like very like politically correct, we have to include this, we have to have like a public service announcement about him being black, we have to tiptoe around it, we have to like make every single conversation have the punchline being the fact that he's black. They didn't do that, but they still addressed it. Really early on in the debutante episode, they addressed it with the dad not wanting him to escort his daughter at the debutante ball. Then, of course, like closer to the end of the series, actually, the last like maybe like 3 episodes, they revisit him being black again in a very tasteful and very accurate way. Again, without putting like him under the microscope and saying like, oh, like he's a black character and he's the poor one and his dad left his family. Of course he's black. It all makes sense. They didn't do it like that. They made it so more so like, okay, he's this, like he's a student here. He has this friend group. He lives with his mom, blah, 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 blah. And then he just so happens to be black on top of all of that. It wasn't like such a like matter of fact kind of thing. Takumi, I love Takumi's fashion on the show. In the book, Takumi, again, he's kind of, I understood that he needed to be a part of the group because it wouldn't make sense without him being a part of the group. But in the book, I was still kind of confused how he fell into this friend group, you know, like, because it's understood that him, Alaska, and the Colonel have been friends for years before Miles even comes on the scene at all. But you're kind of like side-eyeing, like, what is Takumi's role really? Like, we don't know a lot about his backstory. We don't know, like, who he hangs out with besides Alaska and the Colonel. We don't know what, like, his other friends are, if there are any. But it is explained in the book that he was previously a rich kid, or is still a rich kid, but, like, he chose not to associate with those students for X, Y, and Z. And I think bringing Takumi into the film aspect of the interpretation was super important. We do get to see him, like, kind of develop in the before and after of Alaska as well in a different sense. And I also love that they included the fox hat scene with him. In the book, it kind of like, it's definitely another, like, really quotable moment in the book, but it's kind of like a out of context, like, what? Okay, like, yeah, it's super quotable because it's just so out there, but it doesn't really, like, make sense or fit in. But I love that they included it in the TV series and let him have that. I mean, I figured they would, but I love that they let him have that moment and let that be something that was such a classic part of the book be a part of the TV show as well. The rain quote. So there's a quote in the book, if people were rain, I was drizzle, she was a hurricane. I was really worried about this quote being included in the TV show, only because it was the biggest, most popular quote of the book, like the biggest quote of the book. But it was a quote that he didn't say out loud to anyone. He wasn't like a quote in conversation. He said it to himself, like his inner thoughts as a narrator. I think he actually like goes back to his room after hanging out with her and like plops on his couch, and then he just like says this to himself. So I figured they did have to include it because it was the biggest quote of the book, but I was a little bit wary about how they would include it without it being like a voiceover or a dialogue. And I was scared that they would either make it a voiceover or make him like say it to one of the guys and make it seem very like naive and like puppy love-ish and not give it the depth that it deserved. But he actually ended up saying it to his mom after Alaska dies. He like says it or like yells it or vents it to her. I think they did the best they could with including it, but not making it. I'm glad that they didn't have him say it to one of the guys or one of his friends. I'm glad they had him say it to his mom, which is a character that didn't personally know Alaska. Because in the book, he's saying it essentially to the audience, to the reader. He's not saying it out loud to anyone else. and we as the reader and the audience don't know Alaska personally. So he's saying it to someone that doesn't directly know her, but someone that hasn't directly experienced all that she is. And then in the TV show, he's also saying it to someone that has never met her, which is his mother. And I think that's the best that they could do without cheapening it by doing a voiceover or doing it like as a boy talk about girls, kind of like, oh yeah, she's this, she's that kind of thing. I appreciated that it was included, and it was probably incorporated in the best way that they could. I did notice that, I believe, if I'm correct, in the book he says it before she passes away, because he says it like after he like comes back to his room from hanging out with her. And then in the TV show, he doesn't say it until well after she dies, and he's like talking to his mom about it. So there's that. Dr. Hyde, he was an important character in the book. I didn't realize like how sage he really was until I saw it on screen. I think in the book, it was kind of like, okay, like there's this old guy that like has like all these like things to say, and he's kind of like pandering to Pudge's like obsession with quotes and obsession with like life. This guy just like, what are the odds that like, you have this character that's obsessed with last words and obsessed with like the great perhaps, and then you have this teacher that kind of like panders all of that for him and just kind of like feeds his addiction. So I was kind of like side-eyeing it in the book, like what are the odds this teacher is like just like encouraging him to like be obsessed with this stuff even further than he already is. But I think in the TV show they really showed the importance of him, the wisdom that he had, because the eagle was a great like authoritative figure and kind of like a parent figure of sorts when the kids are at the school away from their parents. But Dr. Hyde is that in such a different way, in a non-comical way, like reprimanding way. You know what I mean? I love the conversation that they included with Dr. Hyde and Pudge right before the funeral. I think that was beautiful. It translated to screen very well. The compassion that Ron Cephas Jones brought to the TV series in general was amazing. And I also just recently found out that the scene between Dr. Hyde and the Colonel, when he like visits him at his mom's house and they have that like emotional conversation, that wasn't even originally included. Denny Love, the actor that plays the Colonel or Chip, he kind of suggested like, why don't me and Dr. Hyde have any scenes together like on screen, like one-on-one? And then and then Josh Schwartz, he actually like right after he like had that talk with him about like, hey, I don't have a scene together, like within a few days, Josh Schwartz went and wrote this scene specifically for them, and then they created that scene. I think that's really beautiful. It speaks to Josh Schwartz's his flexibility, his willingness to take everyone's word into consideration. It speaks to the respect he must have had for Denny. It speaks to the wisdom and the maturity of Denny himself to even like, one, have the balls to say that, but two, just realize that like it would be important for the audience to see that. And I love that that was included. I love that it was not originally there, and I love that it took the actors' perspective and their like insight of like, this needs to be there to complete the story into consideration. I love that they were able to do that and include it again in like not a cheapened way at all. I really appreciate that. I'm not really going to talk about like Alaska or Chip's characters only because they're the main characters and they get enough attention already, like no shade. I don't want to talk about people's acting skills either because I don't want to be like, oh, like she was the wrong pick, he was the wrong pick. I think everyone, I think the cast together as a whole, it couldn't have been paired together any better. I actually just found out that the actress, Sophia, that played Laura, is actually freaking Eloise from Eloise at the Plaza and Eloise at Christmas Time. I love those movies growing up. I still watch them every year when they come on during Christmas time. There's Eloise in the Plaza, and there's Eloise at Christmas Time. She's that little freaking actor. I knew like her facial structure looks familiar, but I was like, I don't want to like, I don't know where I know her from. But when I found out it was her, I was like, oh my god, like that's like so perfect full circle. Because like me as like a little like reader girl, writer girl, I loved Eloise, and then seeing her in a film that's about like one of my favorite books was just like so full circle for me, and I really appreciated that. And then the girl that played Sarah, I thought her acting was really good. She did a really good job, like having resting bitch face. She did a really good job, like kind of being snobby, but also like being cute, and you still kind of like felt for her, even though she was not a great girlfriend. I think she was an amazing actress, and I found out that she was the girl that played the older brother's girlfriend slash bully on the Fuller House reboot, which I wouldn't have picked that. I knew I recognized her for sure, more than I recognized Sophia, but I thought that was really cool about casting. Not that they did it on purpose, but just like knowing that I knew them from other things and like seeing how far they come with their acting ability was amazing to me. I don't really know anything about the girl that plays Alaska, Christine, I think is her name. I don't really know anything about her prior work. I think she did a good job. Personally, like the Alaska that I envisioned when I read the book was totally different physically. So seeing her was kind of like, And then when I saw the trailer, I was really skeptical about like how like young the characters looked and how like just how young they looked, you know. But I after seeing the product as a whole, it made sense to me. I think she did a good job as well. There were some things that I think in the book, as far as like personality traits and like interests of hers, I think were like some were like hyper like highlighted in the TV series, and some were like not shown at all. I think they made her like very like 70s hipsterish as far as fashion, and they made her like a huge book nerd, which was really accurate. But just like physically, I didn't really see the connection. But even John Green himself said everyone that he talks to about Alaska envisions her completely different about how she looks. So they had to just go with what made sense. For Chip, I think he was just the right amount of awkward, just the right amount of annoying, just the right amount of like still boy and still like what the heck? He was the right amount of like still a guy at the end of the day, still like kind of like wanting that boy approval, still kind of like being a jerk to an extent, you know. Like I think they did a good job there. I'm not going to speak to anyone's acting ability or casting ability really, but I think the combination couldn't have been created without all of those people being included. And lastly is the music. I thought the music was amazing. It really like reminded me of the music, even though it's not the same music, not even the same era or period of music at all, but it reminded me of how perfectly the music in The Perks of Being a Wallflower film, the music in that was fit perfectly. And even in the book, they reference music a lot in that book, so it made sense to include those songs that are directly referenced in the book. With this one, I didn't even go into it thinking about music at all, but I love that they did include modern music. I love that they included music that we would have heard in 2005 when the book was written, or when the book was published, I guess. I love that they included covers of songs. So it was still that song from like 1997, but they did a modern cover of it, so the lyrics were still there and still powerful, but they made it modern to make it palatable to 2019 music listeners' ears. I love that they included the Strokes. They included "I Will Follow You Into the Dark," even though it was a cover. I think they included "Such Great Heights." I think that was a cover version as well. They included so much music that I was just like I didn't expect the music to be that good. I really didn't. I don't know why I didn't. Considering that the showrunners were the showrunners from the OC. I never watched the OC, but I know that during that era of TV in general, music was really poppin' as far as like music matchups with TV shows. So I don't know why I ever doubted the music wouldn't be good, but I was highly impressed with that. Just in closing, I feel like seeing the book that John Green wrote, his very first book, seeing like the words that he wrote on paper, seeing that they can be visualized. There were certain scenes where it was exactly how I envisioned it when I was reading the book. And I'm a really strong like visualizer. When I read books, I like to really like paint the scene in my head as I'm reading, like what the character is wearing, the facial expressions. Like I really paint the scene when I'm reading a book. In fact, there were scenes from the book that were visualized onto film. They looked exactly how I imagined them, and knowing that like that can be done for me as a writer, as someone who is a writer who wants to publish novels, who wants to have my work on screen one day. Seeing that and knowing that it's possible for a project that I love and hold dear to my heart so much, knowing that it's possible for me as a writer myself, it was so encouraging and so motivating, and it just makes me want to keep going. So I'm very grateful for this project. I finished watching it last night. I kind of like took my time watching it. But I after I finished it, I immediately wanted to go back and watch it again from the beginning. So I think it's a timeless piece. I think I will continue to revisit it for years and years to come. I definitely want to read the book again because I haven't read the book in probably 10 years. But I probably will start watching the show again tonight because I loved it that much. And it really blew my expectations out of the water. I know when it first was announced that it was coming out, I was very skeptical. I was very hard on them. I was very, I didn't hold anything back as far as like what I thought it was going to be and how I thought it was going to let me as a reader down. And for the most part, it did not let me down. So yeah, kudos and props and thank you times a million to everyone that made this happen. It finally happened. They finally created it, and it was as good as it could have been. And I'm very, very happy with the project. I know my opinion doesn't matter, but as a writer, as someone that also does this from the outside looking in, from the inside looking out, I really appreciate the care and the detail that went into it, and I thought it was phenomenal.